Well, hi. For any of you that don't already know, my name's Rob, and I'm glad you're here. Um, for any of you that don't know, also, I tend to get started talking and don't know when to quit. So this time I actually set up a stopwatch over here to kind of help me keep it under control a little bit. Uh, I go from not knowing what to say to not knowing when to quit saying, kind of in a short amount of time sometimes. This deck where I'm sitting right now is in the south central mountains of New Mexico on the west edge of a little town called Ruidoso. I've been coming up here for a long time. I started coming up here in about 1980 or 81. Been coming up ever since, except for a noticeable gap from about 1985 till about 2020, when I was part of that time living in Colorado, and part of that time just too stinking busy to get away and come do something like this. I'm fortunate to have a friend that's got a cabin up here he lets us use. My wife, who everybody knows is Happy Hair, has a business where she comes up and does uh, sales at the events that they have here and other places, and so we get to come up here. She goes and works, and I get to hang out and make YouTube videos, I guess, or something like that. But this is the deck where I very first announced that I was going to begin this series, the series on grieving and trying to help other people in dealing with things. And I think that it's appropriate that today I'm doing this video to talk about the passage of time and time healing wounds is kind of the subject for today. Today is August the 7th, 2022, and today marks the third anniversary of what kind of led us to this, and that is my two oldest girls getting killed in a car crash and almost losing my third girl in that same crash. So for that reason, I'm glad that we're here. I'm glad that we're here to talk about that. I've even got notes that I'll be looking at from time to time in order to kind of keep myself where we need to be. You know, here in one of the recent videos, we talked about reaching out to other people, people we know who have been through something like this, and how that reaching out to them helps them feel not forgotten. And I am blessed in that today I have had texts from several different people, text, phone calls, an email or two, and even over the last 2 or 3 days, as people knew that this was coming on and knew that I was bracing myself for it. My wife and I both kind of bracing ourselves, and our other daughter. And so little things like that, you know, we'll just throw that out there again. It's a great thing to do. If you know someone that's going through this, send them a little note once in a while. Let them know you haven't forgotten. Don't worry about making them think of it, because I guarantee they're probably thinking of it anyway. And in today's, I mean, with everything that's going on today, it is so easy just to be able to send just a little heart emoji, or one of the little emojis with the tear coming down, or just anything like that, that makes somebody feel appreciated and remembered without even you having to think of a bunch of words to try and tell them and say to them. That's kind of a big deal sometimes. Everybody needs that. Everybody needs to be remembered and know that people think about that kind of thing. You know, a lot of people say the passage of time heals all wounds. Maybe. I don't know. We're only 3 years into it, but I get clues from other people that even though a lot of time has passed, they didn't necessarily find that healing yet. Now, it gets easier for sure, mostly, I guess. You know, you used to, once or twice or 3 times a day early on, I would just fall into a puddle on the ground. I would just fall completely apart into several pieces, it felt like. I still do that once in a while, but not as often now, not as much. Oddly enough, up here, I'm about 4 hours away from where I live, in I guess, northwest Texas, you'd call it, kind of the way far south edge, just out of the panhandle, but not as far west as El Paso, and a little bit further north anyway than what a lot of people refer to as North Texas, the part between Dallas and Oklahoma. So hard to describe where I am, but 4 hours away, and I dropped the girls off, Christy and her partner, to go do their show. stopped to get gas on the way back, and at the gas pump, a guy pulls up that I went to school with, um, oddly enough. And so we visited for a little bit. And he, coincidentally, was maybe the first other person after we had the accident that I found out had also lost a child. He and his wife lost a son 25 years ago. And we talked about that a little bit today. I told him that because of that, I had been thinking about him already, so it was just crazy. I bumped into him. And he mentioned, kind of like I already knew, that 25 years later, it still hurts. It still hurts a lot. That's not a surprise. Another guy that I know, his name is Mark, and I'll tell you a little bit about him too. He lost a daughter. I got to look it up because it can't be right. Yeah, 17 years ago. 17 years ago, Mark lost a daughter who was 16 years old. Mark is from the same area where I'm from too. He used to be the district attorney there in the county seat there in Lamb County. I've known him for a long time. I've known his family. I knew his dad probably a long time ago, even before I knew Mark. And 17 years later, and it's still a fresh cut and a fresh wound to him. Incidentally, his daughter is buried in the same cemetery where our daughters are, and just a few feet away. So I often go over there and say hi to her. And I didn't really even know her, but I feel that bond with Mark and with her because of that kind of a tragic loss. Mark is a unique guy. I'm going to put a few pictures up as I'm talking about this of Mark. Mark finally got to a point where he wanted to do something to help other people and something to help himself, and he started a series of doing talks and wrote a little book on how to overcome when life has got you down. He does a presentation now that he's done probably all over the world. And the other day was actually the first time I'd gotten to see him do it, and that's what some of these pictures are from. Mark is a unique guy. He took something horrible and has made something better of it. Happy Hair, my wife, has done the same thing. She's got a couple of different things she's done to remember the girls and try to help other people and do things like that, charities that they were both special about. One of the pictures here shows Mark holding up a pair of red panties. This will give you kind of an insight into the kind of person he is. When you get dressed up, Mark being a DA for a long time, the suit and tie and all that kind of stuff, especially when he had to go to court and all that kind of stuff. Well, he's like just about everybody else. He hates wearing that kind of thing. Some people like it, most people don't. Mark doesn't. But when he does those presentations, he still dresses up. And when guys wear a jacket and they've got the pocket there with the little handkerchief that sticks out, and usually the colors that kind of match something. In Mark's case, those match the pink shoelaces on the tennis shoes that he's wearing, and maybe the pink socks he had on. And I can't remember for sure which socks he had on. But when somebody asks Mark about his handkerchief, he pulls it out, and it's a pair of women's underwear. That's who Mark is. He's just that kind of guy. But the talk he does is serious. In fact, when he did this one the other day, he mentioned that he couldn't look at my wife and I while he was doing it, because he tells the story about his daughter getting killed and him coming up on the road and finding her and seeing what was going on. That hits pretty close to home to us, because for any of you that haven't seen the first video where I tell the story of what happened to us, we were at the scene at the accident before they got our girls out of the car, and so we saw all that. And so Mark is able to tell stories to help people heal. I'm going to put links down there too, so you can get to any of Mark's resources that he's got. And I checked with him, and he was okay with me doing that. One of the stories he tells is about a tie that he has on. If you look at the pictures there that I was posting, he has a tie that, I'm not much of a tie person, but this tie is, if I was going to pick a tie, it probably wouldn't have been that one. Well, the backstory on that tie is that his daughter got killed a couple of days after Christmas, literally like 3 or 4 days after Christmas. And that tie had been a Christmas present from her. And, Mark loves his daughter, but, she was a smart aleck like most 16-year-old girls. And so he didn't have any problems with taking that tie back to the store it came from in Lubbock and getting his money back. But then the accident happened, and of course, he had to have that tie back. And so now that tie is a part of his attire whenever he does that and tells the story. So, yeah, 17 years later, and sometimes it's still all Mark can do to keep from breaking down and falling apart. I don't know if that's very hopeful for us. We're only 3 years into it. And part of me wants to be able to get past it, but the other part of me wants, I don't ever want to get past it. I don't ever want to get over it or get better, as they say. But time heals wounds. Sometimes people will tell you, people have told us time will heal us, make it better. It's one of those things, we appreciate their sentiment, but it's the kind of thing you probably shouldn't tell somebody. They probably don't want to hear it, and it may not be true. Time will heal wounds, yes. I've got places, injuries that I've had, and over time those injuries healed, but sometimes it leaves a scar. I got plenty of scars, both physical and mental. There's always going to be scars there that we have to deal with. When you talk to people, when you visit with them, realize that even though it may have been a long time, they're still not over it. Somebody that's lost a child, sometimes somebody that's lost a parent or a loved one of others, sometimes even just a good friend. Time will assuage the wounds, but it doesn't completely heal them. Be aware of that when you visit with people, when you go to help them. I don't know a whole lot else to add on this one, as I check my timer and see that, of course, I went longer than I intended to. But if this is something that's happened to you, if you've lost somebody, be aware that time will soften the tragedy, soften the hurt a little bit. But it doesn't make it go away, for whatever that's worth to you. That was, early on, that was something I thought, once enough time goes by, it will be a little easier. My grandmother, this is a story I didn't know for a long time when I was a kid, but my mom was born in 1937, and she had a sister that was born, I don't even know what year, early 30s. So fast forward to that little girl, Janet was her name. Janet was 9 years old and died of diphtheria. And I sort of knew that as a little kid, but I didn't really know that. As I got to be an adult, I became more aware of it. And I remember being able to see the hurt in my grandmother's eyes whenever she would mention it or talk about it. Her eyes, one or two of my great aunts and uncles, the people my grandmother's age. And that would have been 50 or 60 years, depending on at which point that I remember talking to my grandmother about that. So, time helps, but it doesn't completely heal. I know this message wasn't a real encouraging message, maybe not a real uplifting one, but it's one that I think needs to be mentioned, and because of today being the 3rd anniversary, it just seemed important to say that. Again, thank all of you for being here. I'm glad that you were here to share part of this with us. If you know somebody, tell them you love them. Tell them you remember and you care. Help them remember. And for any of you that are going through this, also remember that you're not alone. None of us are really alone. There's lots of other people that are dealing with this kind of thing and hurting too. That doesn't make us better, but there is comfort in knowing that we're not by ourselves. We're not the only ones that are having to take care of our souls, I guess, in something like this. Anyway, I wish all of you a good day, and I wish you hope and encouragement in your journey and your struggle. I hope that you have some helpful comments to add, maybe some experience you have that you might be able to share with everybody that might help other people. In the meantime, I offer my blessings and my hopes for you. Thanks.